FOSU-itis. Say it with me. FOSU-itis. One more time. Do you know what that is? It's the fear of speaking up. Have you ever been silenced by your own truth? Excellent. Because of severely and ingrained rules of what you can and can't talk about. FOSU-itis slows us down, makes us make the same mistakes over and over again, condemning us to suffering the same losses. And then we get derailed. FOSU-itis silences the most seemingly gregarious people amongst us. Let me make this open now. Robin Williams, Alexander McQueen, Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain. It is said that they too suffered from FOSU-itis. I was diagnosed with an acute case of FOSU-itis when I was on my journey to becoming a parent. Me becoming pregnant was a little bit like baking a butter cake. I had all the ingredients, I had the recipe, which I followed to a T, or so I thought. But time and again, my cake was a flop, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Meanwhile, all around me, everyone was making these perfect little butter cakes. And I was on the end of irritating commentary, like, maybe your eggs aren't fresh enough, or your oven's too hot, or relax, you're beating the eggs too long. To make matters worse, everywhere I looked, every second woman was a pregnant one. Have you ever had that? When you want something so bad, that's all you see? Suddenly, friends who had confessed never wanting children were gleefully announcing, "We're pregnant! What a surprise! We weren't even trying." Well, we were trying, that is. We tried every which way. Temperature method, holding my ankles in the air method, the timing method. We threw the entire Kama Sutra at it. Nothing. Speak up? Hell no. We were the odd ones out. Our condition wasn't something that was talked about in pleasant company. I was already on this tight rope with my cultural and self-views on this end. A Ceylonese daughter, overachiever, I worked full-time. I achieved everything that I had more time or hands to do. Talk about my problems conceiving. Talk about the fact that I was having my right to motherhood slipped out under me. And what was my alternative? The joy of oversharing all the way on this end? As it is, we were fodder for constant speculation, out loud, mind you. The weight of my Asian upbringing, where words like infertility, low sperm count, miscarriages were spoken in whispers. How could I find the courage to speak up? So I shut up. And I came to the conclusion that it was my karma not to have children. After a few years, karma, as it does, evolves, and so did my thinking. And so began my IVF journey of fertility drugs, of recoveries and transplants of embryos, of what felt like 100 blood tests, of needles. Thank goodness I had the subcutaneous tissue that helped the pain along. On our first run, we were an instant hit. We fell pregnant immediately. Our little daughter was born. I was back in control. So after a few years, we thought we'd try again. And this time, just like that ex-boyfriend that you hanker after, we welcomed IVF with open arms. I was an IVF veteran. We had 17 frozen embryos. We had updated literature that said frozen transfers proved to be a higher success rate for women over the age of 35. If you haven't figured that out, it was me. 2, maybe 3 rounds, I thought. We went 6. 2 with full retrievals. Twice losing twins after 10 weeks. The grief was crippling. But so too was the notion of giving up. And so I clung to these cycles as a coping mechanism. Speak up? I didn't know how. I didn't know how to talk about my lost babies. I didn't know how to speak up about how it felt to say yes for the umpteenth time and not know that those needles would actually give me success. My partner didn't speak up about how it felt to sit on the sidelines and watch me go through that process every time, not being able to help. Not once did he speak up about how it was to be intimate with a plastic cup, with grimy, outdated magazines where the models were probably grandmothers themselves. We created our own little silos, almost as if we were in competition. Who was running the bigger wheel of pain? The irony is, we were living in a sharing environment. A sharing economy is what it's called. If I couldn't speak up about something so personal to somebody I knew, somebody I was close to, somebody I apparently loved, how then can we expect anyone to do this on a professional level, where the fear of losses, job, rank, family, face, friends, it's exaggerated. That quiet submission is exaggerated, but at what cost? A recent Holmes report surveyed 400 companies across the UK and the US. And it calculates the cost of communication at $25 billion of loss of productivity per year. FOSU-itis strips productivity. FOSU-itis strips power. Gillian Tett, when she talks about Sony Walkman, when they introduced 3 different digital music devices at the same time, produced by 3 different departments, because these 3 departments were working in silos. In a typical environment where employees balk at the possibility of calling out flawed decisions from the top, there ensued this clumsy dance with the elephant in the room, causing Sony to stumble and Apple to reign as prom queen. FOSU-itis kills. My favorite author, Atul Gawande, in his book Complications, talks about nurses in rural parts of India, where they felt powerless to speak up about doctors not washing their hands, doctors not being able to have access to clean gloves, about broken suction machines, compromising birth mortality rates in these areas. FOSU-itis alienates. Since I started talking about IVF, I've learned that many of my friends were actually going through the same kind of hell I was at the same time. But we all chose to keep these black holes of pain private. Imagine the kind of warrior roar that could have been heard instead of that silent ocean of tears that were being shed, if only we spoke up. So here I am, taking power from my truth and standing here sharing my IVF and adoption victories and failures. We made the decision to adopt, finally taking us to a family of 4. Speaking up allowed us to pivot and find a different direction towards a goal. So will you, as a leader, pick up that gauntlet, create an environment for your team to stand up and speak up. Thank you.
Aarathi? Yes. Is that how you say? Thank you very much. That was actually really good. I think that the comedy that you infused in your whole presentation made it very relatable, made it very interesting. Everyone was waiting, with bated breath to find out the point that you were obviously going to get at. So you're engaging. I thought it was very engaging. The audience was very engaged. Very good delivery, good tempo, very good tempo, and good pausing, good intonations. I think it was very worthy of what we call professional speakers, as it was. And you had the ability of taking something that was very emotional and presenting it in a very easy way for people to understand, but also to still connect with you emotionally, even though you weren't too raw about it, which I thought was very interesting. And I think you were very eloquent as well from beginning to end. And the research also that you mentioned, your presentation was obviously backed by a bit of research, and you peppered it with information here and there that made the whole story very relatable and very understandable. To be honest, personally, I don't think there's that much that you can really work on between now and March. So I'll just hand this over to someone else.
Hi. I really liked your clear speaking. You have a way with words. You did have us on the edge of our seats. I loved your humor, really. Oven's too hot, beating the eggs too long, lovely kind of metaphor, and throwing the entire Kama Sutra at it, all nice. Really lovely kinds of ways of turning words. And I also liked the fact that you brought some data in. I have 2 things that I would offer. One is I felt like you could create a little bit greater clarity about the kinds of things we can and don't speak up about. And the second thing is, I felt at a couple of moments, but they were only moments, but I felt like you've done this speech before and it's not so fresh. And my invitation would be, when you step up to do it the next time, do it like this is the first time you've ever done it, and bring all of that freshness to it. It was a lovely talk.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, of course, humorous, and it was really, that came through very strongly and was a great asset. Even some graphic images along the way to share, which was a little bit edgy, and it got our attention as well, so I thought that was quite good. One of the messages is about overcoming taboos and being able to speak up as well, and a lot of that was related to your personal story and to the struggle that women have in this particular example. But then it kind of transitioned into business and kind of back out again, and I wasn't sure about the linkages there. And related to that, you put up 4 men faces up there at the beginning, saying that they suffered from this too, and I never really got the connection or why. So if I would rethink the slide that you have and maybe find maybe a few things that changed throughout the presentation rather than just one, and then think about, whether that's the most relevant thing. I didn't quite get that link. But a good presentation, absolutely. Thank you.